The call came at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night, and it changed everything Victoria Ashford thought she knew about her mother. "Mom is dating someone," her brother James said, his voice tight with something Victoria couldn't quite identify. "And it's not what you'd expect." Victoria laughed nervously, phone pressed against her ear as she stood in her tiny Manhattan apartment. "What do you mean? Is it someone from the country club? Please don't tell me she's dating Dad's old golf partner, because that would be..." "It's a woman," James interrupted. "A 23-year-old woman. Her name is Jade. And Victoria, I think it's serious." Victoria felt the world tilt sideways. Her mother, Catherine Ashford, 56 years old, twice widowed, former president of the Junior League, a woman who had never in her life done anything unexpected, was dating a 23-year-old woman. It was impossible. It was incomprehensible. It was the beginning of a story that would force Victoria to reconsider everything she thought she knew about love, about family, and about the secret lives our parents live when we're not paying attention. But to understand what happened next, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to meet Catherine Ashford as she truly was, not the mother Victoria thought she knew, but the woman who had been hiding in plain sight for more than 50 years. Catherine Ashford had been raised in old-money Southern aristocracy, the kind of family where appearances mattered more than feelings and reputation was everything. She had learned early that there were rules to follow, expectations to meet, and certain thoughts that should never, under any circumstances, be spoken aloud. At 19, she had married Thomas Reynolds, a suitable young man from a suitable family, because that was what suitable young women did. She had worn a suitable white dress and walked down a suitable church aisle and promised to love and honor a man she barely knew, because the alternative, being unmarried, being different, being anything other than exactly what her family expected, was unthinkable. Thomas had been kind enough. He had given her 2 children, Victoria and James. He had provided a comfortable life in a comfortable house in a comfortable neighborhood. And then, when Catherine was 42, he had died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving her a widow with 2 teenagers and a dawning realization that she didn't know who she was without a man to define her. 3 years later, she had married again, William Ashford, a businessman 15 years her senior, a man who traveled constantly and left Catherine alone more often than not. This marriage had been less about love and more about security, though Catherine hadn't admitted that even to herself at the time. William had died 4 years ago, leaving Catherine alone again at 52. And it was in that aloneness, in those quiet nights in her too-large house in Greenwich, that Catherine had finally begun to ask herself questions she had been avoiding her entire life. Why had she never felt that spark everyone talked about, that electricity, that consuming passion that seemed to exist in every love story she had ever read? Why had her marriages felt more like business arrangements than romances? Why, when she thought about the happiest moments of her life, did her mind always drift to certain female friendships, college roommates, book club members, tennis partners, relationships that had felt more intimate, more alive, than either of her marriages? She had pushed these questions away for years. But at 52, then 53, then 54, they had grown louder. More insistent. Impossible to ignore. And then she had met Jade. Jade Morrison was nothing like anyone in Catherine's carefully curated world. At 23, she was a graduate student in art history, working part-time at the gallery in New York where Catherine had started volunteering after William's death. She had wild curly hair that she never seemed to bother taming, and paint-stained fingers, and a laugh that echoed through the gallery's pristine white rooms like something living and wild. She was also brilliant. And kind. And possessed of an emotional intelligence that seemed far beyond her years. Catherine had noticed her immediately, something about the way Jade moved through the gallery, touching the frames of paintings with reverence, pausing before certain works with an expression of such pure feeling that Catherine found herself unable to look away. They had started talking one afternoon about a temporary exhibit on female impressionist artists, women who had been overlooked by history, whose work had been dismissed simply because of their gender. Jade was passionate about these forgotten artists, about excavating their stories from obscurity, about demanding that the art world recognize their genius. They were extraordinary, Jade had said, gesturing at a painting by Berthe Morisot. They broke every rule, defied every expectation. And the world tried to erase them because it couldn't handle women who refused to be invisible. Something in Catherine's chest had cracked open at those words. Women who refused to be invisible. She had spent her entire life being exactly what was expected, never causing trouble, never drawing attention, always invisible in the way that proper society women were supposed to be. What would it feel like, she had wondered, to be seen? The friendship developed slowly. Coffee after volunteer shifts. Lunch at a small cafe near the gallery. Long conversations about art and life and the ways that society constrains women into narrow boxes. Catherine told herself it was simply mentorship. She was older, experienced, Jade was young, just starting out. It was natural for them to connect. It was appropriate. It was safe. But nothing about the way Catherine felt when Jade was near seemed safe. It was Jade who finally named what was happening between them. They were standing in the gallery after closing time, alone among the paintings, and Jade had turned to Catherine with those warm brown eyes and said, "I need to tell you something, and I understand if it changes things between us." Catherine's heart had hammered in her chest. "What is it?" "I'm falling for you," Jade said simply. "I know it's complicated. I know you're older, and I know you might not feel the same way, or you might not even be," she had taken a breath, steadying herself. "But I can't keep pretending I'm not feeling what I'm feeling. It's not fair to either of us." Catherine should have said no. She should have cited the age difference, the social implications, the fact that she had never in her life been with a woman and didn't know if she was capable of such a thing. Instead, she had reached for Jade's hand. "I think," she had whispered, "I've been falling for you since the first day we met. I just didn't know what to call it." That had been 6 months ago. 6 months of secret dinners and careful touches and a blossoming relationship that had transformed Catherine from the inside out. 6 months of finally understanding why she had felt so hollow in her marriages, why something had always seemed missing, why she had never experienced the kind of consuming love that seemed to come so easily to others. She had never loved men. She had performed love for men, because that was what was expected. But her heart, her actual heart, had always been oriented differently. Toward women. Toward softness and curves and a kind of understanding that she had never found with Thomas or William. At 56, Catherine Ashford was finally, terrifyingly, magnificently in love. But she had kept it secret. From her friends, from her colleagues at the junior league, from her children. She had compartmentalized her life with Jade, keeping it separate from her real world, because she wasn't ready, she didn't know if she would ever be ready, to face the consequences of the truth. And then James had found out. A chance encounter at a restaurant in the city. Catherine and Jade holding hands across a small table, leaning toward each other with an intimacy that couldn't be mistaken for friendship. James had confronted his mother the next day. And by that evening, Victoria had received the call that had upended her understanding of her entire family. Victoria took the train to Greenwich that weekend, her mind spinning with questions she didn't know how to ask. Her mother, a lesbian? Her mother, dating someone younger than Victoria herself? Her mother, keeping secrets, living a hidden life, being someone entirely different than the woman Victoria thought she knew? Catherine met her at the door, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than Victoria had ever seen her. Behind her, in the living room, stood a young woman with curly hair and paint-stained fingers, Jade, presumably, looking terrified but also determined, like someone prepared to defend something precious. "Victoria," Catherine said. "I'm so sorry you found out this way. I wanted to tell you myself. I didn't know how." Victoria looked at her mother, at this stranger who had raised her, and felt something cracking in her chest. "How long?" she asked. 6 months, Catherine said. "But Victoria, I've known, on some level, my entire life. I just couldn't admit it. I couldn't," her voice broke. The world I grew up in didn't allow for women like me. They sat together in the living room, Catherine, Jade, Victoria, while Catherine told her story. The lifelong sense of being different. The marriages that had never quite fit. The decades of denial and suppression in performing a version of herself that had never felt true. And the moment she had met Jade, when everything had finally clicked into place. She sees me, Catherine said, reaching for Jade's hand. Really sees me. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm playing a role. I feel like myself. Victoria watched her mother's face as she spoke, the softness that appeared when Catherine looked at Jade, the way her entire body seemed to relax in Jade's presence. It was something Victoria had never seen before. Her mother, who had always seemed controlled and contained and slightly distant, was radiating a kind of joy that was almost painful to witness. I don't understand, Victoria said finally. I don't understand any of this. You were married to Dad. You were married to William. You were normal. The word hung in the air between them, ugly and sharp. I was pretending to be normal, Catherine said quietly. There's a difference. And Victoria, I'm sorry if this is hard for you. I'm sorry if you feel like I lied to you. But I was lying to myself first. I couldn't tell you the truth because I didn't even know it myself. Victoria wanted to be angry. Part of her was angry, at the deception, at the disruption, at the way this revelation had rewritten everything she thought she knew about her family history. Her parents' marriage, which she had always assumed was loving if imperfect, had apparently been something else entirely. A performance. A prison. A life sentence Catherine had served for the crime of being born into a world that couldn't accept her. But looking at her mother now, at the naked vulnerability in her eyes, Victoria couldn't summon the rage she thought she should feel. Instead, she felt something more complicated, grief for the years her mother had lost, wonder at her courage in claiming herself so late, and a dawning, uncomfortable recognition that perhaps she didn't know her mother at all. Perhaps she had never bothered to look. And Jade, Victoria said, turning to the young woman who had been silent throughout this conversation. Why do you want to be with someone so much older? It was a rude question, and Victoria knew it. But she needed to understand. Jade met her eyes without flinching. Because age isn't what makes someone worth loving, she said. Your mother is brilliant and kind and passionate and brave. She's lived a life I can learn from. She's experienced things I've only read about. When I'm with her, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She squeezed Catherine's hand. I know what it looks like from the outside. Young woman, older woman, people assume I must have some kind of ulterior motive. Money, security, whatever. But your mother isn't a means to an end for me. She's the end. She's everything. Victoria sat with these words, turning them over in her mind. She thought about her own relationships, the men she had dated who had seemed suitable, the connection she had never quite felt, the vague sense that something was missing without knowing what. She wondered if she was more like her mother than she had ever realized. The conversation continued for hours, stretching from afternoon into evening. James arrived midway through, his anger more visible than Victoria's, his accusations sharper. But even he eventually subsided, worn down by the obvious authenticity of what he was witnessing, a mother transformed by love, a young woman devoted beyond reason, a relationship that defied explanation but couldn't be denied. By the time Victoria left that night, she hadn't fully accepted what was happening. But she had agreed to try. To get to know Jade. To keep an open mind. To see her mother not as a collection of roles, widow, society woman, parent, but as a human being with depths and desires Victoria had never imagined. The months that followed were challenging for everyone. Catherine's friends from the junior league largely abandoned her. Neighbors whispered. The social world she had inhabited for decades closed its doors, one by one, as word spread about her relationship with a woman 33 years her junior. But Catherine found she didn't miss it as much as she had feared. That world had never truly accepted her, it had only accepted the performance of her, the acceptable version, the mask. The real Catherine had always been invisible there. Now, finally visible, she discovered new communities. LGBTQ groups that welcomed her despite her late arrival to their ranks. Other later-in-life lesbians who shared their own stories of awakening and transformation. Artists and writers and free thinkers who valued authenticity over appearances. And always, through everything, Jade was there. Patient and passionate, young in years but old in soul, loving Catherine with a steadfastness that seemed to grow stronger with every obstacle they faced. Victoria's journey toward acceptance was slower, more complicated. But gradually, as she spent time with her mother and Jade together, she began to see what they had. The way they finished each other's sentences. The way they seemed to orbit each other like planets around a shared sun. The way Catherine laughed now, really laughed, with her whole body, in a way Victoria had never heard before. On Catherine's 57th birthday, Victoria threw her a party. A small gathering of the people who had stood by her, including, remarkably, some old friends who had come around after initial shock. Victoria gave a toast, raising her glass to her mother and the woman she loved. I spent the first few months after learning about you two being confused and upset and honestly kind of angry, Victoria admitted. I felt like I didn't know my own mother. Like everything I thought I knew was a lie. She paused, looking at Catherine and Jade, at their intertwined fingers and matching expressions of nervous hope. But I was wrong, Victoria continued. The lie wasn't this relationship. The lie was everything that came before. My mother spent 56 years pretending to be someone she wasn't, and I never even noticed she was drowning. I never thought to ask if she was happy. I just assumed that because she was doing what she was supposed to do, she must be. Victoria's voice broke slightly. Mom, I'm sorry I never saw you. I'm sorry I only ever saw what you allowed me to see. And I'm grateful, so grateful, that you finally found someone who looked past all the masks and loved the person underneath. She raised her glass. To Mom and Jade. To love that doesn't follow the rules. To happiness, even when it comes late. And to all of us learning to see each other, really see each other, before it's too late. Catherine was crying. Jade was crying. Even James, who had struggled longer with acceptance than Victoria, was wiping his eyes. Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Catherine pulled Victoria aside. Thank you, she said. For everything. For trying to understand. For defending us to people who refused to. Victoria hugged her mother, really hugged her, the kind of embrace they hadn't shared in years. Thank you for showing me what it looks like to choose yourself, she said. Even when it's terrifying. Even when it costs everything. You taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. Catherine pulled back, looking at her daughter with curiosity. What's that? Victoria smiled. That it's never too late to stop pretending. That love doesn't follow a timeline or a rulebook. And that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let the people we love really know us, even if we're afraid of what they'll think. Catherine reached up and touched her daughter's face, this child she had raised, this woman who had surprised her with grace and growth. I wasted a lot of years, Catherine said softly. Living for everyone else's expectations instead of my own happiness. Don't make the same mistake, Victoria. Whatever you want out of life, whoever you want to love, don't wait until you're 56 to go after it. Victoria thought about these words for a long time after she left that night. She thought about her own life, her own choices, her own tendency to follow the expected path without questioning where it led. And she wondered if maybe her mother's late-in-life awakening had given her something precious, permission to live differently. Permission to question the rules. Permission to love whoever her heart chose, regardless of what society might think. As for Catherine and Jade, they're still together, 2 years later. They travel frequently, to galleries and museums around the world, pursuing their shared passion for art. They've moved in together, into a smaller, more manageable apartment in the city, where Catherine's old life can't reach them. Catherine still faces judgment sometimes. People who don't understand the age difference, who assume ulterior motives, who can't fathom what a 23-year-old could possibly see in a 56-year-old. But Catherine has learned to let those judgments roll off her, like water off a stone. She spent 56 years trying to be acceptable. She's done apologizing for finally being herself. If you're watching this story and feeling something stirring in your chest, recognition, maybe, or longing, or hope, I want you to know that it's not too late. Whatever you've been hiding, whatever you've been afraid to admit, whatever love you've been denying yourself permission to pursue, it's not too late. And if Catherine and Jade's story touched you, moved you, made you think differently about love and age and the courage it takes to be authentic, I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, the most radical thing any of us can do is simply allow ourselves to be fully, unapologetically human. Love doesn't follow rules. And thank goodness for that.